Terrell Brooks walked into Riverbend Diner soaked from head to toe and exactly 5 minutes late. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the floor. His white uniform shirt clung to his body. The bell above the diner door rang once, sharp and loud, cutting through the quiet morning air. Every conversation stopped. Dozens of customers turned their heads at the same time. Forks frozen midair. Coffee cups paused just before lips. No one spoke. No one moved. Behind the counter stood Derek Matthews, the diner's manager. His face was cold. His eyes were sharp. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask why. "Do you know what time it is, Brooks?" Derek said loudly. Terrell swallowed. "I'm sorry, sir. My car." "I don't care," Derek snapped. The words hit harder than the rain outside. "You're late. That's all I need to know." Terrell opened his mouth to explain, but Derek stepped closer, his voice rising so everyone could hear. "Take off the apron. You're fired. 5 minutes late." That was all it took. Terrell stood there, frozen, as if the floor had disappeared under his feet. For years of hard work ended in one sentence, spoken in front of strangers who watched in silence. No one defended him. No one said a word. What Terrell didn't know was this. The man who quietly watched everything from a corner table already knew him, and not as a waiter. But before we get to that moment, we need to go back. Back to the night before. Back to the rain. Back to the choice that changed two lives forever. The storm that night was brutal. Rain slammed against the windshield of Terrell's old Ford pickup like heavy stones. The wipers moved as fast as they could, but the road ahead was still blurry. It was almost 11 p.m., and the streets outside Atlanta were empty. Terrell's hands gripped the steering wheel. His uniform sleeves were still damp from a coffee spill earlier that evening. He had stayed late at the diner again. At home, his 6-year-old daughter Maya was waiting with the neighbor. That thought kept pushing him forward. Maya was his whole world. 2 years ago, her mother, Londa, had died in a car accident. Since then, Terrell had been both mom and dad. He cooked, cleaned, worked long hours, and stayed strong, even when he felt like breaking. Money was always tight. This paycheck would just cover the rent. As long as nothing went wrong. As long as the car didn't break down. As long as Maya didn't get sick. Too many, as long as for one man. Terrell sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. Then he saw it. A black sedan stood on the side of the road, tilted slightly. Its hazard lights blinked weakly through the rain. The hood was open. Smoke rose into the cold air. Beside the car stood an older white man in a black suit, completely soaked. His silver hair stuck to his head. One hand held a phone. The other rested on the car for balance. No umbrella. No signal. No help. Terrell slowed down. His mind warned him. It's late. This road is empty. You don't know this man. Then he saw the man's shaking hands. The worried look on his face. The quiet fear. Terrell remembered the night his wife died. Had anyone stopped for her? That question burned inside him. He pulled over. "Are you okay, sir?" Terrell called out through the rain. The man turned, surprised. "My car died," he said. No signal. No tow truck. Terrell didn't think long. "Get in," he said. "You'll freeze out here." The man hesitated, then nodded. His name was Robert Chamberlain. At that moment, Robert looked like nothing more than a tired old man stranded in the rain. Terrell didn't know who he really was. He didn't know that by stopping his truck that night, he had just stepped into a story far bigger than himself. And by the next morning, that small act of kindness would come back to him in a way he could never imagine. The rain did not stop as Terrell Brooks drove toward his apartment. Inside the truck, the heater hummed softly, pushing warm air into the cold cabin. Robert Chamberlain sat in the passenger seat, his wet clothes dark and heavy. Water dripped from his hair onto the floor mat. For a few minutes, neither man spoke. Two strangers. One small truck. One long night. "Thank you for stopping," Robert finally said. His voice was calm, but tired. Most people didn't. Terrell kept his eyes on the road. "I know how it feels to be alone," he replied simply. Streetlights passed one by one, lighting rows of old apartments and quiet houses. This was not a rich area, but it was peaceful. People here survived together. Terrell pulled into the parking lot of a small 3-story building with faded paint. "This is my place," he said. "You can stay here tonight." Robert turned, surprised. "Are you sure? I don't want to cause trouble." Terrell shrugged. Better than staying in the rain. They climbed the narrow stairs. Inside the apartment, the space was small but clean. A soft night light glowed from the bedroom door. Toys rested on the floor. A child's laughter seemed to live in the walls. "My daughter, Maya," Terrell said quietly. "She's asleep." Robert nodded. His eyes moved to framed photos on the wall. A little girl with curly hair smiled brightly. In one photo, a woman stood beside her. "My wife passed away 2 years ago," Terrell added gently, as if reading Robert's thoughts. "I'm sorry," Robert said. "So am I," Terrell replied. Terrell handed him a towel and dry clothes. When Robert changed, he stared at himself in the mirror. He barely recognized the man he saw. Not the powerful businessman, just an old man who needed help. Later, Robert sat on the couch wearing clothes too big for him. A bowl of soup steamed in his hands. "No one has done this for me in years," he said softly. Terrell smiled. "It's just soup." They talked quietly. About work. About life. About loss. Terrell spoke of Maya and how she asked about her mother every night. Robert spoke less, but listened more than he had in years. That night, something inside Robert shifted. At dawn, Terrell woke early. He needed to prepare breakfast and get to work. The couch was empty. A blanket was folded neatly. On the table was a handwritten note. "Thank you for treating me like a human being." Terrell smiled and slipped it into his pocket. The next morning did not go as planned. Maya woke up coughing, but insisted on going to school. After dropping her off, Terrell's truck stalled in the street. He restarted it again and again until it finally worked. By the time he reached the diner, he was late. 10 minutes. He never saw the black sedan parked across the street. Inside it sat Robert Chamberlain. He watched as Derek Matthews raised his voice. Watched as Terrell stood quietly, embarrassed. Watched as the apron was taken away. Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "So this is how they treat him," he said to himself. Robert looked up at the sign above the building. Riverbend Diner. A place he owned. A place he had never truly seen. He checked his watch. 12:30 p.m. "Perfect timing," Robert whispered. The rain had stopped, but a storm was about to begin. Robert Chamberlain stepped into Riverbend Diner at exactly 12:30 p.m. The bell rang softly, but the room still felt loud. Lunch customers filled the booths. Plates clinked. Coffee poured. Yet when Robert walked in, something shifted. His calm walk, his clean suit, his steady eyes demanded attention without asking for it. Derek Matthews noticed him instantly. "Mr. Chamberlain," Derek said, rushing forward with a wide smile. "What an honor." Robert nodded once. He did not smile. His eyes moved across the diner, over the tables, into the kitchen, and finally back to Derek. "Busy place," he said. "Yes, sir. We run things very tight here. No mistakes." "No mistakes," Robert repeated quietly. He walked slowly toward the counter. "I heard someone was fired this morning." Derek stiffened. "Yes, sir. A waiter. Terrell Brooks. Always late. No discipline." "How late was he?" Robert asked. 10 minutes, Derek replied. Robert turned and looked straight at him. In 4 years, was this his first time? Derek hesitated. "Well, maybe." Robert nodded, then turned away. "Let me hear from others." He walked into the kitchen. "You're the cook." Tommy Rivers wiped his hands nervously. "Yes, sir." "Terrell Brooks," Robert said. "Tell me about him." Tommy glanced toward the front. "He's the best worker we have. Kind. Honest. Never complains. What happened this morning wasn't right." Derek rushed in. "Sir, emotions don't matter. Numbers do." Robert raised a hand. Derek fell silent. Robert turned to Lisa, standing near the window. "And you?" Lisa's voice shook. "Terrell helped me when I started. He protected me from rude customers. He didn't deserve that." Robert nodded once. Then he turned back to Derek. "Call him," Robert said. Derek blinked. "Sir, call Terrell Brooks. Tell him to come back." Derek's hands trembled as he picked up his phone. Terrell sat in his truck, staring at the steering wheel. His mind raced with bills, rent, and Maya's small shoes with worn soles. The phone rang. "Come back," Derek said quickly. "Now." "Why?" Terrell asked. "You'll see," Derek replied, then hung up. Confused but desperate, Terrell returned. When Terrell stepped into the diner again, every eye turned toward him. Then he saw Robert, the old man from the ring, now standing tall, confident, powerful. "Terrell," Robert said warmly. "Thank you for coming." "You're here," Terrell whispered. Robert faced the diner. "My name is Robert Chamberlain. I own this place." Gasps filled the room. "Last night," Robert continued, "this man helped me without knowing who I was. This morning, he was punished for it." Robert turned to Derek. "You fired a good man for being human." Derek's face went pale. "Sir, I didn't know it was you." "And that," Robert said sharply, "is the problem." Robert placed a hand on Terrell's shoulder. "Terrell Brooks is reinstated immediately, and starting today, he is co-manager." Applause erupted. Tommy clapped. Lisa smiled through tears. Derek stood frozen. Robert looked at him. "You'll stay? But you'll change." Terrell's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Outside, the rain began again. But this time, it felt different. The storm was no longer over him. It was behind him. 3 weeks passed after the announcement, but Riverbend Diner was no longer the same place. Terrell Brooks now sat in the small office behind the kitchen. The desk was old, the chairs squeaked, and the shelves were packed with files. Yet to Terrell, it felt unreal. Not long ago, he stood outside this office waiting to be scolded. Now he was responsible for decisions. Responsibility felt heavier than any tray he had ever carried. He reviewed reports every morning, just like Robert asked. Sales were higher. Customer reviews were better. Smiles were more common. Still, something felt wrong. A few numbers did not make sense. Supply costs jumped suddenly. Cash records felt thin. Terrell wrote notes quietly. Across the room, Derek Matthews leaned against the doorway. His voice was calm now, almost polite, but his eyes stayed cold. He no longer shouted. He watched. "You getting used to the chair?" Derek asked. Terrell nodded. "I'm learning." Derek smiled without warmth. "Good. We'll need teamwork." After Derek left, unease stayed behind. That evening, Terrell reached home early. Maya ran to him, holding a drawing. A bright diner, smiling people, and a small heart above it. Terrell hugged her tightly. For a moment, work worries faded. But the next morning, they returned. At opening time, Terrell counted the register. He stopped, counted again, then again. $150 were missing. Lisa noticed his face. "Something wrong." "Probably a mistake," Terrell said softly. Lisa hesitated. "Derek stayed late last night." The words settled heavily. Terrell waited until the diner closed, then checked the cameras. He rewound the footage slowly. At 10:45 p.m., Derek stood alone. He opened the register, removed bills, and placed them inside his jacket. Terrell's chest tightened. He watched again, then again. This was no mistake. Outside in the parking lot, Terrell called Robert. His voice stayed low. "Money is missing. I have video." "It's Derek." Robert stayed silent for a moment. "Don't confront him. I'll handle this." The next days moved slowly. Terrell acted normal. Derek acted polite. But every smile felt sharp. On Wednesday, a man entered the diner wearing a leather jacket. He ordered coffee and watched everything. His eyes missed nothing. This was James Porter, the investigator. By Friday, the truth was clear. 8 thefts. 3 months. Thousands stolen. Robert met Terrell that evening. "We end this publicly," he said. Monday morning arrived heavy and quiet. The diner filled with customers. At 9 o'clock, Robert walked in. At 9:30, the police followed. Robert spoke calmly. "Derek Matthews, you stole from this diner." Derek denied it until the video played. Silence fell. Handcuffs clicked. Derek looked at Terrell with hate. "You think you won." Terrell answered calmly. "I chose honesty." Derek was led away. Applause rose slowly, then strong. Justice had finally stepped inside Riverbend Diner. That night, Terrell closed the diner alone. The lights felt warmer than before, but his thoughts stayed busy. He locked the door, stood for a moment, and breathed deeply. Fear was still there, but it no longer ruled him. He knew the truth mattered, even when it was hard. Outside, the street was quiet, and the sign above him glowed softly. Tomorrow would bring questions, changes, and work, but also hope. Terrell walked to his truck thinking of Maya's smile, Robert's trust, and the people inside the diner who believed in him. For the first time, he felt steady. Not lucky, not rescued. Just steady, standing on honesty. And somewhere deep inside, he understood this was not the end of the story. It was only the moment before everything finally became clear. Rain tapped lightly on the windows as if reminding him where it all began. Terrell smiled faintly, knowing kindness had started a chain he could never break. And tomorrow, he would protect it, no matter the cost for everyone he cared about. The morning after Derek Matthews was arrested, Riverbend Diner felt unusually quiet. Not empty, but calm in a new way, as if the walls themselves were breathing easier. Terrell Brooks arrived early, just as he always did. He unlocked the front door, turned on the lights, and stood still for a moment. The smell of coffee soon filled the air. The sound felt comforting, familiar, safe. Lisa arrived next, smiling softly. "It feels different," she said. "It does," Terrell replied. "In a good way." Tommy walked in carrying a box of fresh vegetables. "No more watching our backs," he said with a small laugh. By noon, customers filled the diner again. Some had heard what happened. Others only felt the change without knowing why. People stayed longer. They talked more. They smiled more. That afternoon, Robert Chamberlain joined Terrell at a corner booth. "You handled everything well," Robert said. "I was scared," Terrell admitted. "But I kept thinking about my daughter. About what kind of man I want her to see." Robert nodded. "That's leadership." Over the next weeks, small changes became big ones. Terrell adjusted schedules so no one was overworked. Lisa was promoted to shift lead. Tommy got an assistant. Complaints dropped. Reviews climbed. Riverbend Diner began to feel like a family. One evening, Terrell returned home tired but peaceful. Maya sat at the table drawing. "Daddy," she said, "you smile more now." Terrell paused. "Do I?" She nodded seriously. "You don't sigh so much anymore." He hugged her tightly. That night, Terrell lay awake thinking about how close he came to losing everything, about how one choice in the rain changed his path. A week later, Robert called him. "I want you to take full control of daily operations," Robert said. "I trust you." Terrell felt his chest tighten. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Responsibility grew, but so did confidence. Months passed. Spring arrived in Atlanta. Flowers bloomed near the windows. A new sign hung outside the diner. Riverbend Diner, where kindness is served. Customers noticed. So did the city. A local paper wrote a short article. A diner run with honesty. A place that treated people like people. One evening, after closing, Terrell stood outside under light rain. Across the street, a car sputtered and stopped. An older man stepped out, looking worried. Terrell didn't hesitate. "Need help?" he called. The man smiled in relief. As Terrell offered help, he remembered Robert's words. Kindness always finds its way back. Inside the diner, lights glowed warmly, waiting for tomorrow. And Terrell Brooks knew this was the life he had fought for, earned by doing the right thing when no one was watching. The storm had passed, but the lesson remained. 6 months later, Riverbend Diner stood brighter than it ever had before. Morning sunlight poured through the wide front windows, touching every table, every chair, every smiling face. The walls were freshly painted, warm and soft in color. Framed photos showed staff laughing, customers hugging, and small moments that once would have gone unnoticed. Terrell Brooks stood behind the counter, watching the diner come alive. He no longer wore the old uniform. His shoulders were straighter now, his eyes clearer. The tired heaviness that once followed him everywhere was gone. In its place stood calm confidence, built slowly, honestly. Lisa trained 2 new servers near the register, patient and steady. Tommy worked in the kitchen, humming quietly while his assistant chopped vegetables beside him. The diner moved smoothly, like a well-practiced song. At a corner table sat Maya, her legs swinging as she drew in her sketchbook. She looked up and waved when she saw her father watching. Terrell smiled. Robert Chamberlain entered a few minutes later, as he often did. No announcements. No attention. Just a man walking into a place that felt like home. "Coffee?" Terrell asked. Robert nodded. "The usual." They sat together while the diner buzzed around them. "Revenue is up," Terrell said. "But more than that, people feel welcome." Robert looked around. "That matters more than numbers." Terrell thought back to the rain, the broken car, the simple choice to stop. Everything in his life now traced back to that moment. Later that evening, after closing, Terrell wiped the counter slowly. The diner was quiet again, but not lonely. He turned off the lights one by one and stepped outside. Rain fell lightly, just like that night months ago. Down the street, a car sputtered and stopped. A man stepped out, frustrated, checking his phone. No signal. Terrell paused. Then he walked toward him. "Need some help?" Terrell asked. The man looked relieved. "Yes. I don't know what to do." Terrell smiled. "You're not alone." As they walked toward the truck, Terrell felt something warm settle in his chest. Not pride. Not victory. Purpose. The next week, a small article appeared in the local paper. A diner built on kindness becomes a community symbol. When asked about success, Terrell's words were simple. "We treat people like people." That was all. That night, Terrell tucked Maya into bed. She held his hand tightly. Daddy, she said softly, do you think Mommy is proud of you? Terrell swallowed. I hope so. Maya smiled. I think she is. After she fell asleep, Terrell stood by the window, watching the rain fall gently over the city. Life was still hard. Bills still came. Worry still existed. But fear no longer controlled him. He had learned something important. Kindness is not weakness. Honesty is not foolish. And doing the right thing always leaves a mark. Somewhere, someone else was stopping their car in the rain. And the circle of kindness continued.